原作者ジュリアン・フェローズが語るベルグレービア秘密だらけの邸宅街。海外ドラマダウントンアビーシリーズの制作脚本を手掛け、自身も貴族であることで知られるジュリアン・フェローズ。ベルグレービア秘密だらけの邸宅街では原作を執筆しました。彼が描きたかった世界観、映像化にあたっての裏話など必見のインタビューをご覧ください。
Part of the new social mobility of the early years of Victoria's reign, and they've been working with the Cubits to build the area known as Belgravia and so on. And the other ones, the Brockenhurst, Lord and Lady Brockenhurst, are a very different kettle of fish. They belong to the old established aristocracy. They are occupying much the same position that their forebears would have done 100 years previously. So you've got New London, New Britain, Imperial Britain, trading Britain, expanding Britain, alongside the old Whigs and Tories struggles of the 1750s. It's a completely different viewpoint, and they are brought together because of whatever happened around the time of Waterloo. And to a certain extent, they slug it out. Really, the two mothers are very contrasted, but at the same time, in a sort of slightly grudging way, they quite respect each other, and they seek to right ancient wrongs, and I suppose that's what it's about. Belgravia is a narrative that has its roots before Belgravia, from the Regency from 1815, and then it is developed, but it is very much a central narrative with an element of mystery that is then solved. And we have our big revelation scene and all the rest of it, with a hero and a heroine and these traditional ingredients. I don't think I did have characters cast when I was writing it in the same way as I did with Downton, and I have with other things I've done. No, I think Gareth, Neame and I were anxious not to use the same Downton team, for whom there was a part for every one of them, really. And we had Jill Trevelyan casting it, who cast Downton actually, who is a very, very good casting director, and always comes up with people who are on the nail for what you're looking for. Of course, I had some old favourites in it. I mean, I was very pleased with Harriet playing Lady Brockenhurst, Harriet Walter, and Tom playing Lord Brockenhurst. But I loved them all, really. I love Philip Glenister as James Trenchard. And I was very sort of excited by that, because it was a very difficult double to play, this sort of creeping snob who's also a very strong character. Also, I loved Tamsin Greig as Anne Trenchard. That was very thrilling, because we needed someone who was as strong as Harriet but completely different, and clearly from a different setup and all the rest of it. And I think she gets it absolutely dead straight down the line. When we change times and we go from 1815 to 1842, whatever it is, I thought it would be both fun and interesting to mark it with a social change that happened absolutely at that moment. And my research gave me the fact that the Duchess of Bedford of the day, a great lady who was a lady-in-waiting to Queen Victoria and so on, and she had come up with this invention of afternoon tea, because what had happened is dinner for the Georgians was at sort of 4 in the afternoon, sliding back to 5. And their evening was you had dinner, it went on until about 7 or 8. You then went to the play, or you went to the opera, and then much later you had supper. And that was sort of oysters and this and this and this and this. So, I mean, you did eat quite a lot, but nevertheless, where we have dinner in the middle of the evening, sort of 8 o'clock, they didn't. They were then doing whatever they were going to do in the evening. But that started to change in the 1830s, and dinner began to slide back, at first in London and later on around the country. And it became the social event of the evening in a way that for the Georgians it hadn't always been. And they would go to at-homes and things after dinner. Well, that stayed true, but what it meant was that the at-homes got later and later. And you went there and then you had a sort of supper or a breakfast or whatever. And gradually, as dinner started to slide away, the gap between luncheon, which was at kind of 12, earlier than we eat it now, got bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And the Duchess came up with the idea of not just kind of nibbling on something, but actually having an articulated new kind of feed where you ate different things. You ate sandwiches and cakes and all of that stuff. And she was the first person to lay it on formally. It was not eaten as a nursery tea around a table. It was eaten usually all over a room, and you had plates coming by and cups of tea coming, as we would eat it now. I don't think we did take much license with the costumes. I mean, the most difficult thing for the women was that this was a period when skirts had started to go out in the 1820s, and then they went out more and they went out more. And the way they were pushed out from a small waist, that was the element, was by adding more and more and more petticoats. What would happen at the end of the 1840s is some bright spark would invent the crinoline, and suddenly it was possible to hold the skirts right out with this invention of whalebone and linen, and for the legs underneath it to be completely free. So, of course, for women it was a godsend that they could have the fashionable shape, but not be dragging these 500 petticoats with them wherever they went. But the petticoats were at their worst in the 1840s, and I do think some of the actresses have found that quite difficult, because you are sort of wading through mud all the time. But nevertheless, the shape, the look of that era is very distinctive. It's the beginning of what would become the crinoline shape of the small waist and then the skirt going out like that. And I think that was quite trying for them, if I'm honest. I suspect I was pushing my luck a bit with this novel, really, because I didn't write it for television, and so I didn't give a lot of thought to how expensive it would be to film. But when I sat down in front of it to adapt it, I realized that we had not battles perhaps, but certainly balls aplenty, and receptions and scenes in the streets and riots and crowds and but Gareth took it on the chin, and we do seem to have made a very rich looking show that we're in the middle of it still, but I'm terribly pleased by what I've seen in the assemblies, because they haven't cut any corners. As for the number of locations, I mean, we seem to be in every county in England. We don't, apart from one house on the borders, we don't seem to be anywhere for longer than 2 days. So who organises the logistics of that? Lord knows. But anyway, that is what's happened, is that they have accommodated the novel. And that has been a very pleasant, I wouldn't say surprise exactly, because they wanted to do it, so I suppose they knew what it was. But it's very rewarding to know that we haven't had to trim it down much.
海外ドラマ「ベルグレービア秘密だらけの邸宅街」スターチャンネル EX で独占配信。